We've stopped calling cabs and started summoning them. The physical act of waving down a car has been replaced by tapping a digital map. The ride-sharing market jumped from $214 to $245 billion in 2025. But entering it hits a roadblock: app development costs. Hiring local US or European developers for an Uber clone runs $175,000 to $300,000, covering real-time tracking, AI matching, and search pricing. For a startup or a mid-market local fleet owner, an initial capital requirement that high kills the return on investment before a single line of code is ever written. So if you cannot afford local development, you look for alternatives. The primary one is the offshore arbitrage model, working with specialized South Asian agencies like GrowRankers. The premise of labor arbitrage is straightforward. You are accessing experienced engineering talent in a different economic zone to secure significantly lower hourly rates. But that immediate price drop always triggers the same anxiety. Does a cheaper hourly rate mean broken, unscalable code? That is what we are going to stress test. We need to see if the GrowRankers development model actually translates those cost savings into a stable, profitable platform. Evaluating an agency is not about comparing dollar signs on an invoice. It requires understanding the exact architectural compromises and trade-offs you must accept to hit that lower price point. This matrix compares a traditional native app on the left against the GrowRankers Agile MVP on the right. For architecture, the traditional method requires building two completely separate applications from scratch, one for iOS and another for Android. GrowRankers instead relies on cross-platform frameworks like Flutter or React Native. Engineers write a single codebase that deploys to both operating systems simultaneously. This single codebase approach cuts your total development time by 30 to 40%. That time reduction directly impacts your wallet, dropping the initial MVP cost down to a much more manageable $35,000 to $70,000. But here is the exact trade-off. You sacrifice hyper-specific hardware optimizations, and whenever Apple or Google releases a new OS feature, you must wait for the cross-platform framework to update before using it. Choosing a cross-platform framework is a calculated risk. You trade ultimate technical perfection for the financial runway needed to launch on both app stores. Beyond the code itself, we have to look at the raw cost of the labor. In Western countries, premium engineering rates sit over $150 an hour. In South Asia, those rates fall to between $20 and $50. That rate difference means founders can afford to build a complex, feature-rich aggregator app with dynamic fares and driver verification for $60,000 to $150,000. But offshoring comes with a heavy logistical trade-off. You are abandoning an in-house engineering culture for an external agency operating in a completely different time zone. To mitigate the severe communication risks of an asynchronous work cycle, GrowRankers enforces a strict protocol. They assign a dedicated client success manager to every project to bridge that time zone gap and keep deliverables on track. Then there is the infrastructure strategy. Instead of building tools from scratch, GrowRankers integrates proven third-party APIs, like Stripe for processing payments and Google Maps for routing. Trying to engineer your own proprietary routing logic or a secure payment gateway is a massive, expensive undertaking that drains both time and budget. By combining offshore labor with rented API infrastructure, you can radically accelerate your timeline down to an 8 to 12-week MVP. The catch is that you accept ongoing operational API fees that scale right alongside your user base. This chart illustrates a critical reality many founders overlook. Development costs continue long after launch day. An app requires 15 to 20% of its initial build cost every year just to stay operational. That maintenance budget goes towards surviving mandatory OS system updates, scaling your servers on AWS, and maintaining strict regulatory requirements like GDPR and PCI compliance. By relying on an external agency, you are signing up to keep them on an indefinite retainer to manage updates, rather than transitioning knowledge internally. Choosing an agency for the initial build restructures your capital into a long-term technical partnership, ensuring you have the necessary expertise to keep the platform alive through years of updates. This quadrant chart maps budget size against business model complexity to show how GrowRankers functions as a specialized tool for founders leveraging cross-platform code and labor arbitrage. Looking at the bottom left quadrant, if you are an ultra-bootstrapped solo founder with less than $30,000, you should avoid custom builds entirely. You are better off settling for a restrictive, pre-built white-label SaaS product. Up in the top right quadrant, a heavily funded unicorn must build an in-house enterprise team to control their proprietary AI algorithms from day one. But right here in the center, we find the sweet spot. We will call this the GrowRankers zone. This optimal zone belongs to mid-market fleet owners and funded startups, operating with a budget of $50,000 to $150,000. In this zone, founders get a rapid, high-quality aggregator app deployed in 3 to 4 months. That is exactly what you need to prove your concept to investors or digitize local fleets. If your goal is to validate, launch, and scale intelligently without burning your entire capital reserve on local developer salaries, this offshore arbitrage model is a mathematically sound, highly leveraged investment.